Hello and welcome to the Celtic Down Under podcast network. We are the Tuesday crew, my name is Stephen McCutcheon, and I'm delighted to join tonight by a fantastic array of podcasting talent, Willie, Gav, and Dave. So, Gav, how upset are you that we've now lost one game against the Huns, and with it the bragging rights for the summer, according to Ailey Barber on Sky Sports, with complete domestic dominance clearly out the window?
Yeah. I'm not that annoyed at all. In fact, I'm so not annoyed, I'd like to start on a slightly different subject, if I may. Thanks to Craig Stephen for informing us that Smell the Glove was the name of a fictitious album by Spinal Tap. There was controversy in the film over whether the album cover was sexist. The artwork consisted of a, quote, greased naked woman on all fours with a dog collar around her neck and a leash, and a man pushing a black glove in her face to sniff it. So that solves that puzzle of where that came from.
All right, straight in with the good stuff then, Gav. I like it. So that diverts our attention away from the game. This is the first podcast we've done following a Celtic loss, which sort of sums up how the season's gone for us. So how are we going to get through it, Willie?
I don't know how I'm going to cope. I mean, it's obviously soul-destroying. That's it. The league's gone. The treble's gone. Everything's gone. It's all over. It's done. Doomed. We're doomed to failure now. So, yeah. Just got to keep going, haven't we? Like, we never stop.
We've got to soldier on somehow, yeah. And Dave, we've not seen you for a couple of weeks. How are you doing, and how are you feeling in the aftermath of a bad loss?
Well, I'm a glass half full kind of guy, and since I was last on, we've won the league and made a cup final, so I feel like maybe I should take a break more often. And we've had the loss we had to have, or the loss that it doesn't matter whether we had it or not, really. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about where we're at. It's good.
Yeah, that's good. So welcome to everyone joining us live in the YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, as that helps us grow the channel. If you're listening to the audio, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to join the convo, you can reach us on our socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, with the handles at the top of the page or in the episode notes. So as mentioned, we lost a game on the weekend, 3-0 at Ibrox, in a stadium which closely resembled the Dante's Seven Circles of Hell. We were deservedly beaten 3-0 by the Cream Buns in a game where we fielded a weakened side in a match which really had no bearing on the championship race. Now, instead of focusing on the game itself, we're going to first talk about what we might have learned from the game, particularly in regards to individual fringe players who were given game time. And I guess the first place to start with that is the manager. So do we think that Ange got this one wrong? He's had almost a flawless record so far, with a couple of minor blips, one at St Mirren earlier in the season, and you've got to go all the way back to last season for the last time he sort of got anything wrong. So, Gav, do you think Ange made a mistake by picking the side that he did, with basically 5 players who would not normally be named in the starting lineup?
Well, I saw you on Axom talking about that, Stephen, and so I know your answer. You think he did kind of make a mistake. I mean, Ange likes to say he was putting out a team that he thinks could win the game. But, there's a couple of things that we can't deny about that. He obviously did use it as an opportunity to put some fringe players to the test. As you said, it was an experimental side. There's no getting away from that fact. So that sort of explains the fringe player element and why he chose them. But there's another thing at play here, I think, for like the regular starters in our team. I don't think it's realistic to expect them to play like it really was a vitally important game. These are elite competitors. And in elite level sport, the mental side of the game is often what makes a difference between success and failure. So no matter how much you try and tell players in training, look, this means a lot to our fans, it's a big game, go out there and win it, they know in their brains that in terms of the competition, it means fuck all. They have been celebrating winning the league over the past few days. You can't just take that knowledge out of their heads. So that's also a factor. And regardless of what we as fans think about the importance of this game, in terms of the real competition, there's only one game left that means anything. The rest of the league games don't really mean anything. So I don't think it's fair really to expect the same high degree of focus from the regular players. Did Ange make a mistake? I mean, there's a part of me thinks he acknowledges that this game is of less importance than the games that went before. He's a competitive guy. He would have liked to have won it, sure, but I don't think he's as raging as everybody says. He's disappointed that the Fringe players, many of them perhaps aren't up to it, or he didn't see evidence that the players were all out there giving their all like he told them to. But for the reasons I mentioned above, I think it's kind of unrealistic to expect that. So I'm not really going to put it down to a mistake. I don't think that's the right word.
Interesting points, Gav. The only thing I would say in rebuttal to that is maybe that there's never a meaningless game against Rangers, and every one is an important one. In terms of not just points towards league championships, but mentally, this is the last time we're going to play them before they go into the summer, and we could have really sent them in on a real downer if we beat them. And the sort of nonsense we're seeing in the media just now and this week about how this shows that there's no gap and all this nonsense, and they've got the bragging rights now and all sorts of crap like that. That's only going to get ramped up in the weeks to come.
But can we not rise above that? We're so dominant. 5 trebles in 7 years. They are also rants. I think it's sort of it feeds into their narrative that the gap's not that big if we get angry about this game. Let's be magnanimous and congratulations, Rangers. You won a wee game. Well done. Have a nice summer. Go and buy a few more championship players and we'll see you back for the next season. Because, we're in such a position of strength. I think we all agree that, we can just pat them on the head and congratulate them.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, in terms of what we've learned is sort of those levels of complacency. And we've had the reminder not to be complacent, not within the game itself. I kind of agree with you, Gav. Not that it was clearly the wrong side to put out there to win that game because they performed poorly and didn't win that game. But, as we can clearly see, we've learned something about those players. But also, Rangers played well. They performed well in front of their own crowd, and it's kind of a reminder not to be complacent and to have that assumption that we're just going to be able to roll out and beat that team every time. And if we had have done the clean sweep all year, then maybe we would be having a bit of complacency. I wouldn't have thought that Ange Postecoglou would have that, but maybe at the board level or at some level that we'd be thinking that. And on the flip side to that, it has hopefully injected a bit of complacency into the other side of the ledger as well. If we're hearing these things, I try and avoid those sort of the commentary as much as possible around the Daily Rangers and so on. But if they're thinking that that's an indication that they're on a par with Celtic now, then they're kidding themselves. And so if there's
let them,
yeah, exactly, let them. But also that we can't just assume that we're going to always just stroll through and beat them. And so if Ange is looking frustrated, I think it's maybe that point you make, Gav, is that those players didn't step up to the occasion, and he's going to need to make some more moves. And if that's what's needed, fantastic.
Yeah. So Willie, there was 3 changes to the team that were unforced, in addition to the 2 that had been forced through injury. So you had Bernabe, O, and Abada, who came in for Taylor, Kyogo, and Maeda. Anything there that particularly surprised you before the game when the lineup came out?
Yeah, Bernabe really did surprise me. I thought we'd had enough changes in defence to go making three quarters of them to be new to the team, if you know what I mean. It really did upset the rhythm that we have going there. I know Starfelt moved to right back, and Kobayashi was a force change, but throwing Bernabe in there was just, I think it was just one change too many in the back line. And if you stuck with Greg Taylor, you'd have that bit of continuity there. But it's all hindsight now. He now knows that we know as well that Bernabe has a lot of work to do in order to be classed as a decent backup option to Greg Taylor, let alone a first team challenger. So, and with Abada coming in, I just think it came too soon for him. I don't think he has that sharpness to be playing in a game of this level or magnitude straight off the bat, coming back from his injury as he has. And what also happened with that, you push Jota out onto the right, which means you lose Maeda. And Maeda, we all know Maeda pins Tavernier down. Tavernier can't leave his own half, fear of getting ripped to shreds for the pace of Maeda. And with the uncertainty on our left side of defence, Cantwell just seemed to drift in there. And Sakala, between the two of them, they seem to manipulate Bernabe a bit, and which allowed more space in behind for Tavernier to get in about and get some crosses and that in. So yeah, it was probably one or two changes too many, I think. But it's all hindsight now. I mean, he probably has a good idea now who is and isn't going to make it, and who can and can't be sold in the summer, if any reasonable bids come in. So he's got a clear. I would say Ange's probably got a clearer image in his head of how to progress this team forward. And as Gav says, if they think that this is the making of them, then let them, because we can move forward too. They think they're going to move forward. The key indicator is that we're not going to stand still, and they need us to stand still to catch us. It's not going to happen, and we now have a clearer picture of how we're going to move forward with that.
Yeah, we might look back at it as a great thing that happened because of all the consequences that flowed from it, both in terms of their approach, everyone having faith in Michael Beale, him going out and buying whatever players he's going to buy, them thinking that the gap's not that great, us redoubling our efforts to improve the squad, and to really push on and to spend money and all of that. It might be no bad thing at all.
Yeah, so we'll talk about individuals in a minute, but I just felt as if, I agree with you, Willie. I felt as if changing the personnel in both the flanks was just too much, and the team just completely lost their balance as a result of that. You had Bernabe coming in with Jota in front of him. You had Ralston on the other side, who's only played one game before in that game, and he had Abada in front of him, who's just back as well. And the way we've played all season long, it's been about getting the fullbacks inverted and getting them to be joining into the midfield, and neither of them seem to achieve that. And I'll just bring in a comment from Mahesh here. Rangers outnumbered Celtic in midfield, given how Cantwell plays. Cantwell, Raskin and Lundstrom used to slow Hatate on the left. Hatate 13 touches out of 53 in final third. O'Reilly 23 on the right. So I think midfield, I agree with what Mahesh is saying here. Midfield was where we lost the game. And a lot of that came down to the fact that the fullbacks just weren't in the correct areas of the field. Is that a fair comment, Gav?
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable comment. But, I don't really want to talk about the individual aspects of the game, actually. I've moved on. I've watched less Celtic-related content since that game than I normally do, just because I can't be bothered picking it apart. I have faith that this summer is going to be a good one. Ange knows what to do. The checkbook's going to come out, and we're going to be bigger, better, stronger, and all than this season. Incidentally, I look back to the the mic'd up session, the "We Never Stop" video, just to see exactly what he said, because I see in the comments somebody says, was it Mickey Moynihan says, "We sometimes stop," and I wanted to see, did Ange say, we stop when we've won the league, or words to that effect? He didn't quite say that. He said we stop when we've when the game's finished, when we've won. We stop when we celebrate. And as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned, we've celebrated and then we stopped.
Yeah, I think I saw that comment from Mickey Moynihan as well, and was kind of thinking it's a funny comment, but it's almost like we actually don't stop. He's looking ahead now, or we're looking ahead into next year already. Whereas Rangers played their cup final on the weekend, and so yeah, I think there's a what is it? I was talking about. Was it results? No, sorry, performance, not results. And that was a poor performance, and we get information from that. The result actually doesn't matter a great deal. And of course, taking on board what you say, Steve, it's not just any old result. You know, it's a game against Rangers. It matters. I think we all understand that, but in some ways, we're sort of looking beyond that. And yeah, so I'm not too worried at all.
Yeah, so may move on. We'll talk about some individuals and see if there's anything we've learned about them. Whether any of these guys have, you know, I know it's probably brutal to say whether any of these guys have got a long-term future at the club. But certainly for a couple of them that might be the case. And we'll start with Bernabei, who came in left back for Greg Taylor. Now Bernabei cost just short of £4 million, and when we brought him in from I think it was from the Argentine. I can't remember the name of the team, but he obviously came and he was brought in to not just to challenge Greg Taylor, he was brought in to displace Greg Taylor and be first choice left back. You don't spend that amount of money when you're Celtic on a player that's going to be a backup. And I think it's fair to say he's been a disappointment. And I think we're getting to the point now where we might have to make a decision on Bernabei, and it might have to be this summer. And I personally, I wouldn't be surprised if he disappears out the door, whether that be on loan or whether it be for a small transfer fee to try and get him off the wage bill. So I'll put that one to you guys, see if you agree or not. Willie, what do you think?
I just don't think his style of football, his game is not compatible with Rangers' style of play. He doesn't like inverting. He likes to be the overlapping fullback. You know, if we were playing under Lennon or under Rodgers, he would probably be an ideal fit for Celtic. But at this moment in time, I don't see anything to say. Defensively, he's good enough to play for us. Attacking wise, he can get forward. He can get into good positions and he can cross good balls. But he likes to attack the byline. He likes to get down the outside and get to the byline. And that's the same area Maeda or Jota or whoever's in front of him is trying to attack. So there seems a bit of confusion there as to is the guy in front of him going to go inside? Is he going to go on the outside? It seems to be a lot of confusion there and who's attacking what area. So, like I say, I have this suspicion his style of football is not going to be that what we need. So I would look to move him on probably.
So what do you think, Dave? Do you think Bernabei's got a future next season? Do you think we'll see him in the starting lineup or in the squad at all next year? He seemed to struggle even in the attacking aspects of the game. I felt his distribution was poor. He was quite ponderous in possession, and he was caught in the ball quite a few times. So do you think we'll see him next year?
I mean, possibly. I'll leave the technical analysis to better heads than mine on that. But I mean, my sense of him and a number of the others in similar sort of came in at a similar time is that we've hardly actually seen him. It feels like, I don't know the numbers or anything like that, but it feels like, you know, we get glimpses of some of these guys, and then I guess that's a consequence of the way that we play. You know, like this idea that we don't stop until the league is won, and so there's little rotation, and yeah, there seems to be, and so yeah, I guess some of the comments and in terms of what we've been saying, it is a little unfair perhaps to be sort of judging some of these guys coming in for this one big game against Rangers and then not performing when it's taking them a while to get up to speed. I mean, even Abada, has sort of been here a long time and played a lot of games, but never really had a full run at it. And I don't think that's because Ange plays favourites. It's just that he wants to pick a side to win until that trophy is won. So yeah, I think a similar, O's probably in a similar sort of scenario. We'll probably talk a bit more about him later on. Yeah, Kobayashi and others, and maybe I just haven't been noticing it with my technical with it from that technical point of view, but I just feel like I can't really tell. But yeah, I mean, he's looked okay. I think he hasn't set the world on fire, but neither have many of these backups, except for a few of the people who are coming in as backups, I suppose. And then once they do earn that spot, then they get rewarded. And Aaron Moy is a really good example of that. The way that Matt O'Reilly's kind of been in and out a few times because he's really been, rewards performance. Yeah, so much the rotation as the sort of we're here to win it.
So yeah, I'll just bring in a comment from Michael Ross, which I think is probably quite pertinent, and he's saying Taylor is a weak link in Europe. And yeah, no, that's very true. Greg Taylor did struggle a bit in Europe, and I think that was one of the reasons we had high hopes that Bernabeu was going to be the answer and take us up a level at the left back position. So, Gav, do you think that's something we should be looking to address now? Should we be looking to sign a first choice left back? I know we'll get to that later on in the show, but just quickly, do you think we should be looking to sign one?
Well, that's a question that you raised a long time ago, actually, on the pod. You thought that Ange was going to be in for another left back. And at the time, I was a bit taken aback by that. I was thinking, oh, no, Bernabeu will come good. I expressed that I have a soft spot for him. And I really want him to succeed because he looks like a nice wee guy and stuff. But, the question I asked in the group was like, how much patience can you have? He's been around a fair bit now, and I think it's obvious that he hasn't delivered what we expected. And as Dave says, Ange isn't one for, playing favourites, especially if he's not producing the goods. I fear he might be out the door. And just because we spent money on him, that's no reason to not cut our losses or not acknowledge the reality of the situation. So the reason I mentioned that you mentioned this a long time ago, Stephen, is that none of what we're talking about is knee-jerk reactions based on that last game. We're talking about the body of evidence since these players have joined the club. And it'd be hard to paint Bernabeu's time as anything other than a real disappointment, perhaps even a complete failure. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if that is a position we wanted to improve upon. What I try and do is think, imagine we had a Johnson on the other side as well. Imagine we had a Jota on either wing. How much would that improve us? And our opponents see Taylor as a weak link, as was mentioned in the comment, and they target him with high balls. And if he's a weak link, what's Bernabeu?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you should have listened to your old dad weeks ago. I told you about Bernabeu. I think his time's pretty much up. I think you'll see him going in the summer. Someone mentioned in the comments there it's unlikely you would put a £4 million player out on loan. Let's try to find the comment. There you go. From Gone Yourself. We don't pay £4 million for a player to put him on a loan. That's mental. I absolutely agree, which is why I think it was sold. I think he's probably still at a point where you could get a little bit of the money back you paid for him. Certainly not all of it. And there may be some teams in Spain that would take him. So we'll move on to the next player I want to talk about. I just want to talk about Kobayashi, who was in instead of Cameron Carter-Vickers. Obviously, this was a forced change with Cameron Carter-Vickers, but out for the rest of the season. Now, we did last week talk in the pod about how Kobayashi was quite badly bullied by the two Hearts strikers, Shankland and the other guy, Giannelli. And I think we had some concerns and expressed them coming into this game. And I think those concerns were sort of validated. He was probably culpable for certainly for two of the goals, at least partially culpable. So are we concerned about Kobayashi, Willie, and his lack of physicality in particular?
Yeah, a little bit. We've got St Mirren on Saturday. Curtis Main's coming to town, so we all know that he's given Carter-Vickers and Starfelt a good sort of roughing up at times. So Kobayashi's in for another rough game this weekend. So, it's have we got another Julian in our hands? A guy who can pass the ball nice and clearly, not just passing. Good defender, can win the ball, but when it comes to a physical tussle, he just backs out straight away. And it's kind of the signs are pointing at it at the moment. Right? Yeah, I am a little bit concerned, but if he gets it right on Saturday, then you could turn around and say, okay, he deserves his chance for the rest of the season. But I wouldn't go dropping him just yet. You could just absolutely destroy any confidence the boy has straight away if you just, like, that's 2 games you're out. It might just diminish him completely like that. One more goal, and then if it doesn't work, then you could say that maybe it's time to bring Stephen Welsh in for the remaining 2 games of the season, see how he gets on with Starfelt.
So yeah, Dave, I was a little bit concerned also, apart from his physicality, with his sort of lack of passing distribution from the back. I thought that was missing from his game on the weekend. So, that's what he's supposed to be good at. So that would be another concern for me. How did you see that?
Yeah, didn't notice it particularly this time around in terms of that we were getting that movement from the back there. So yeah, if that's what he's there for. I mean, he's there to defend firstly, and yeah, he's culpable on both the goals. So yeah, he's on thin ice really. But again, he's got that opportunity to claim it. Hopefully he can take that opportunity. Welsh, they're a similar age from what I gather. I think 22, 23 years old. I think this is a big moment for both of them. So yeah. That's what it comes down to. They've got a few games to. It's his jersey just now, so yeah, they've got till the end of the year.
Yeah, I think it's a bit early to be sort of bringing the guillotine down on him. I think he needs to bulk up. Perhaps he needs to learn about the physical side of the game. He has to understand how to play it. I don't know much about the Japanese game, but I would imagine there's not too many Curtis Mains knocking about there, that they come up against week after week. So, I mean, one would hope that in time, with training, with physical conditioning, and with a bit more nous gained through experience, he could step up.
Yeah, so he's 22 years old. He will be turning 23 over the close season on the 18th of July. So, he's not a young kid. He should be moving into the sort of best years of his career as a professional football player. So, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's too early to write him off. But I'd be seriously considering giving Stephen Welsh a run in at least one of the games between now and the cup final, just to see how he goes. And I'm by no means a Stephen Welsh fan. I think, we need levels better than Stephen Welsh if we're going to progress as a team. But I don't think he would have got bullied off John Souttar the way that Kobayashi did. And for that matter, I don't think Maurice Jens would have been bullied off of John Souttar the way that Kobayashi was. So I think that's a problem, definitely. And a few people mentioned in the comments, he just needs to live in the gym over the summer. He needs to work on his upper body strength. And he also needs to work on his concentration, because he was sleeping at the first goal. I mean, that was nothing to do with physicality. He was just caught ball watching. And one thing you have to do when you go to Ibrox, you've got to be switched on, certainly, in the early part of the game, to stop them getting a foothold in the game.
Well, that's another point about that game that means we shouldn't be too worried about the result, is because all of their goals came from our mistakes. So, we didn't. Well, they didn't win the game. We lost it. If I could take a leaf out of their playbook.
Well.
Yeah, that was a famous Bill. What was it? Bill that said that we didn't win the game. They lost that. It was one of their players.
Campbell. That was my friend, TikTok Todd.
Your mate.
Todd the Prod, they're calling him now.
Yeah. So just on the, I'll bring up a quote from Kaiser HTTC here. He said, "Do you think it was a foul for Souttar's goal? Any truth in that? Was that a foul?"
I only saw it the once.
I don't think we were ever going to get that decision after the furore around the Morelos Johnson incident in the cup. So that was never going to go in our favour. But I didn't think it was a foul. I think it was just two players going for the ball and having a physical tussle, and Kobayashi was just too weak. So I didn't think that was a foul. So just quickly, we'll move on to everyone's favourite Korean striker, O, who replaced Kyogo up front. Had a great chance to equalise like a minute after they took the lead. Dinked it over the keeper, hit the base of the post, and missed. Didn't really seem to contribute to the game after that much. So I'll go to you first, Gav. I know you're not O's biggest fan, but do you think...
Don't go to me then. Go to someone else.
All right. Willie, I'll go to you. Do you think missing that chance sort of got his head in the wrong place? And I think Ange kind of alluded to this after the game, that he let that miss get to him. But he was barely seen again for the rest of the game.
His head went down after it, certainly, and I'm surprised he didn't hear me screaming at him from New Zealand. Like, I think he made the wrong call, trying to think the ball over the keeper. The keeper had grounded himself. All he had to do was sidestep and tap it into the empty net, and it was a goal. It was a nice little think he did, and he's just unlucky it's at the wrong side of the post. But he went missing after that. So for me, his head's gone down. He didn't get much service, to be fair. The midfield was misfiring badly, as was the fullbacks, and just an all-round bad performance from middle to front, back to front, whatever you want to call it. And as he's as Gav says, he's the spear of it all. If you're not getting service out to him, he's nothing to get onto. So kind of felt sorry for him a little bit, but I think he should have done better with his chance. He should have taken it. Like I say, the goalkeeper had grounded himself. All he had to do was just sort of take it to one side and into the empty net. Made the wrong choice. So he'll learn from it, but I think it's becoming clearer and clearer. Gav was right earlier on when he said we have a third choice striker there. And he's young enough to learn to make his way up to second and maybe force his way into the first team more regularly, but not at this moment in time for me.
Yeah, disappointing that I felt that he just didn't do the same closing down that Kyogo did on anywhere near it. A lot of the defensive players seemed to have a lot more time in the ball, including their goalkeeper, where Kyogo and Maeda, for that matter, would have been closing them down. And I think that sort of fed into a lot of their issues. So, Dave, do you think? I mean, we've kind of talked about this to death in the last couple of weeks, and we all agree that we need a new striker in the summer. Do you think will be second or third choice?
Hopefully third choice. I think it's the opportunity to strengthen over the summer is have someone who's going to challenge Kyogo, and that's the standard we want to set. Not necessarily a different style of player, or not necessarily that O is. It is disappointing that O, as Willie kind of says, both in that incident and more broadly, didn't take the opportunity to to show that that's him. But he's a different player to Kyogo, and he's a different, he's not really, he probably couldn't get himself around the park as quickly and as often as Kyogo does. And how much do we create from that? So even when Kyogo's not in the game, he's in the game, but he doesn't have that build, he doesn't have that style. And whether he has the mentality or not, I mean, I guess not, because he didn't take that opportunity to do so. But yeah, I think that's where we should be looking. We've got something we might be talking about a bit later, but maybe we're talking about it now as well. But just I think we should be looking to challenge our best players, looking to push them as far as possible, rather than necessarily fill in gaps. A few runs down.
Yeah, so Gav, I'll let you skip the conversation about O.
I don't want to skip it completely. I just want to quickly say my problem began when every man and his dog was saying that, oh great, we've got O, he's an upgrade on Giakoumakis. And I thought, well, I've seen no evidence for that. Just because he comes on and he's enthusiastic, enthusiasm only gets you so far. Giakoumakis was a stone cold killer in front of goal. And, you know, we're so lucky that Kyogo stayed fit all season, because if we'd have asked O to do what Giakoumakis did last year, could have been a very different story.
Well, it took Giakoumakis a while to hit that, to hit his stride. And he was so O's been a summer signing, right? So he's had less time to kind of get to that level. But it feels like Giakoumakis had to work through that sort of the poor performances that he had, because the responsibility was on him. And so the responsibility hasn't been on O. And thankfully, we've seen the best of Kyogo and consistently from him. So, you know, but who's to say? You know, Giakoumakis, I think, I absolutely agree with you. He's like, deadly in front of goal. One touch.
And I take, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
I take that point that, you know, people compare O's record during the time he's been at Celtic, compare that to Giakoumakis's. There's not a great deal in it. That's all I'm saying. It's too early to be saying that O is a replacement for Giakoumakis or he's an upgrade. That was where my problems began with O.
I think at this stage of the year,
since then, his touch, you know, it's his touch that kind of gets me. Oh, he's still there?
Yep, still here.
Everything's gone black for me. Oh, you're all back. That's good. That only happens when I'm talking about O. I think it's a complete system failure. Did you see the moment where McGregor played a ball into O and O had his back to goal? There was like a defender behind him. And it was played in a reasonable pace, you know, and not only did he fail to control it, but it kind of bounced off him even faster than it came to him. When that happened, I was just like, oh, you know, he did one turn and we all lost our minds a few weeks back. But yeah, his touch it's pretty shocking to me. But, you know, summer, pre-season, training, he can still come good. I'm not writing O off forever at all. He could still be a great player. But, you know, upgrade on Giakoumakis? No, not yet. Nowhere near it.
I've been watching a bit of. I've been watching a bit of the MLS recently. Because I'm going to Canada in a few weeks, so I'm hoping to get to Toronto FC game. So I've been studying up on them, and they came up. So watched a few games, and they came up against Atlanta recently, and Giakoumakis was leading the line, and he looks pretty happy. He's the star of the show. He's the big signing from Celtic. He was scoring goals. I think he might have scored a couple, and he looked pretty happy. So I wouldn't be feeling sorry for Giakoumakis. And he's maybe found his level, and fair play to him. Good on him.
Yes.
But
and he wanted away, as everyone is commenting. In there's hundreds of comments saying, but Gigi wanted away. Yes, he did. Obviously, if Gigi had stayed, it wouldn't have been great. And I'm all up for getting rid of players who don't stay, but you know, the facts are the facts. We'd be in trouble. Had to do what Gigi did last year.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflicting comments here about them. So Kaiser HTTC says Gigi couldn't trap a bag of cement in a phone box. So not a fan of Gigi's first touch. But then again, Robert Gibson is saying Gigi was miles better than O. It has been pointed out. Here's one from John Kerr. O is much younger than Gigi was when he came, and that's very true as well. And Kaiser comes back in and says, reactive comments, Gigi was one away, and O has way more potential than Gigi. Now, I think
both true.
I think it's all true. I think that O probably has a higher ceiling than Gigi. I think Gigi was closer to his ceiling when he played for us than O is to his. We just need to find a way of unlocking that potential, which I'm sure Angus is capable of doing.
There's another good comment from Kaiser there.
O's got time on his side, but he's not ready for it just yet. I think he just needs to bide his time, and it'll come.
This one here, you talking about, Gav?
Yeah.
Seen milk turn faster in the freezer than Gigi. Yeah, good stuff. Love it. All right, we're going to talk a bit about Abada and Ralston, but we might skip those two, for the interest of time and moving on to some of the stuff we want to talk about. So what we're going to do next, we're going to have a look at the team from last season and sort of identify areas where we might have improved and areas where we might not have. So I pulled together the team when we played in the corresponding fixture against Rangers this time last year. And we had Joe Hart in goal, the back four of Juranovic, Carter Vickers, Starfelt and Taylor, midfield of Hatate, McGregor and Rogic, up front Jota, Giakoumakis and Maeda. And coming off the bench in that game, we had Nir Bitton, Liel Abada, David Turnbull and Tony Ralston. Unused substitutes, we had James McCarthy, Mikey Johnson, Yusuke Ideguchi and Scott Bain. So it should be pointed out that Kyogo was injured at that point. So we'll look at the front line first. And I'll put this down to you, Dave. Do you think we've improved in the attack? Now we've gone from Kyogo to Giakoumakis. And I think that's about all we had at that time. And we've replaced that with Kyogo and O. Do you think we're better off now or were we better off then?
I think we've just had that discussion in that I think we're a bit weaker just now. If you look at the straight personnel change, but we're much stronger because we've had Kyogo fit and firing all year. And so I think one of the goals, we've scored many more goals this year than we did last year and probably been in more comfortable positions than a lot of the scraps that we found ourselves in last year. So, a lot of the cohesion and unity, I suppose, has come from being in a more comfortable position through the year and just letting, Kyogo do his stuff. But in terms of personnel, seen all the comments in there as well, and Gigi had his limitations, but I think in terms of performance last year, he did a Herculean task. So it's a funny one. I think we're stronger, but with weaker personnel, and again that's testament to I think Maeda as well, and Jota continuing to be an outstanding performer at the Scottish level, and Maeda and his continuous, really, demonstration of a completely unique role in this team compared to any other, and the amount of chances that created from that absolute determination to chase everything brings a whole other dimension to the side, which was there last year, but I think is happening. The confidence I think that Maeda has, realising that he doesn't have to go out there and score a heap of goals, although obviously he's there to do that as well, to set them up. But so a strangely contradictory one, that we're sort of weaker in terms of straight up personnel, but stronger in terms of performance. And and I think, as I was saying before, we'd be very vulnerable without Kyogo there. And also we need to keep pushing Kyogo and not be complacent in that way. So if we're going to sign a striker, it's not to be as a backup or to, provide that complete different option. I think it's to push all of them to the next level.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Kyogo's a far better player now than he was at this time last season. I think he's added further strings to his bow. There was some question marks about him scoring in big games, and he certainly put that to rest this season.
He was missing a lot last year, right? From memory, again, not the stats, but he seems to be much more clinical now, and whether that's having a good run at it. But his numbers are right up there.
I think it's interesting also that Maeda and Jota are still the first choice in both those flank positions, and I think the fact that none of them were in their preferred position on the weekend, was a long way. Went a long way to us losing the game. But we'll just move into midfield now, where we had Rio Hatate, Callum McGregor and Tommy Rogic there last year. Obviously, Tommy is now gone. Matt O'Reilly was there on the weekend. We also have Tomoki Iwata, and we also have David Turnbull there who can play, and we also have Aaron Moy who was missing injured. So does that say that we're probably stronger in midfield now than we were, Gav, this time last year.
Yeah, I think with the arrival of Iwata and Moy and the way they've played, particularly Moy, Iwata, I hope there's more to see from him, because I think he's introduced himself to us in a very piecemeal fashion. He didn't pass the ball forward the first 3 appearances, and slowly, little by little, he's been showing us a bit more what he's capable of. Yeah, and last season, Rogic obviously was great, but was coming to the end, so it's kind of hard to say. O'Reilly's been amazing, and then awful, and then pretty good. But I think when you think of the likes of Turnbull and Beaton and even McCarthy and Itaguchi getting a look in last season, I think it's pretty obvious we've improved to some extent in midfield. It's not to say we can't go further. I sort of yearn for a midfield, box-to-box, energetic guy who runs the show. Like a sort of McGregor on steroids. I know it's sacrilege to suggest that anyone could be better than Callum McGregor, but there's a few of them aren't going to be around forever. Moy's not going to be around forever, and we've heard that Ange is in the market for midfield strengthening, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, I think our midfield's better than this time last year.
Yeah, I'll just bring up a comment from Kaiser, HTTC. It's his first string midfield in that game at Ibrox. They were out-hustled. In my opinion, we needed volume, and we have depth of quality to just boss that area in these games. So I think, the sort of depth of quality that we have in these games now is far better than what we had last year, and I think that's why we've bossed most of these fixtures this year. So we'll move on to the defence. So Greg Taylor, Starfelt, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Joseph Juranovic last year. We've obviously replaced Juranovic with Alistair Johnson, who's unfortunately injured at the moment. So it's probably not really been much change personnel-wise in defence. But Willie, how do you think we've improved in terms of players developing their games?
I think there is. I think we're stronger in defence this year than we were last year. I think when Johnson's playing, it gives us a great attacking outball there, and he's strong in the challenge. So he surprised me. Like if you'd said to me 12 months ago we're going to sell Juranovic, how would you feel about that? I would be a little bit concerned, because Juranovic was a great player for us. But the fact that Johnson's slotted in there and he's usurped him in that position, or fans' favourite now, it's credit to the boy. And on the left, you've got Greg Taylor, who everyone says, look, left back is a serious concern. We need to really address that position this summer. We're out, and we've got Bernabe for $4.5 million from Argentina, and then Greg Taylor's raised his game, so he's been really good this year. The guys seem to reckon he's a weak link in Europe, so it is a position we probably need to strengthen him. But he has raised his game, and if you do get somebody in who's better than Bernabe, then who's to say he won't raise his game again another level? Is there another level there for him to go to? But I would definitely say we're stronger defensively this year, because CCV and Starfelt have a great understanding. Last year we conceded a few goals.
Okay, I think we've lost Willie for a second there. He's just frozen. Yeah,
well, I think we heard the conclusion. He's concluding that we're better than last year. Were you going to then move on to the goalkeeper?
Yeah, we can move on and talk quickly about Joe Hart. Obviously, Joe Hart's Joe Hart, and he's the same goalkeeper as last year. Do we think he's improved as a player from last year, or is it much of a muchness there?
Well, I think he's less heart attack inducing on the ball, but then you have to compare that with the aging process. As you probably know, Stephen, your reflexes, don't get any faster as the years tick by.
There's no need for that, Gav. That's very, very harsh. Let's get a birth certificate out and compare them.
What happened? What did I miss?
He fell off it.
Oh, the highlight of the show, Willie. We'll tell you about it later.
Gav said always he's a great player. Yeah, so yeah, we just moved on to Joe Hart and sort of concluded that he's been better than what he is last year. He's sort of involved his game a little bit, and I think he's a stronger goalkeeper. But we'll move on from there to discuss the transfer window, which is up and coming. It'll be open again before we know it in a few weeks. So what do we think we should be looking to do in the transfer window? We've already sort of mentioned a new left back. My question is, should we be looking for quantity or quality? Should we be looking to bring in a small amount of high-value players who can step straight into the first team, or should we be looking to make some depth signings? Dave, I'll go to you first, mate. What do you think?
Quality. I think this is a time to be bold. And we're moving into a European campaign. We've had the pieces in place for some time. There's a building of some depth, and yeah, let's go big. But there's some interesting counterpoints. It depends on who comes in and who goes out. And I think there's going to be some surprises, as there were last year. Yeah, I don't think we can anticipate too much. We want to maintain the depth that we have now. Someone's made a good point in the comments as well around how, post-Christmas we haven't had any European football. We hope that changes next year. And so you definitely need the depth to kind of play at that intensity that we're meant to. But I don't mean like go and get some Galacticos or anything like that, but I just mean make sure we've got the quality there because as good as our manager is, as good as our structure is, as good as our it's the better players who will play the better football in all those conditions. I think we've got those pieces in place now to be really going bold.
Yeah, I just had to go and Google there who Stanley Tucci was. As a result of Pete McGee. I'll bring up that comment there. That made me laugh.
He is about
just
60 kilos lighter than me, I would say.
He's a good-looking man. But what I can see off Google, so I'll take that one. I would take that one if I was you, Gav. That's a good one.
More Bruce Willis than Stanley Tucci, surely.
Yes. Not looking well these days, Bruce Willis.
Oh, yeah.
So, Willie, I'll just go to you. What would be your priority positions if I asked you for a 1, 2, 3 in terms of if we were going to sign 3, for instance, say £7 million players, what positions would you be looking to sign for?
Left back, striker, goalkeeper.
No midfielder? You happy with the midfield as it stands?
That's next on my list. Next would be right wing attacking midfielder or centre back. But top 3 would be left back, striker, goalkeeper. Striker priority, somebody to put pressure on Kyogo. Left back second, goalkeeper third.
And what type of striker should we be looking for? A similar style to Kyogo, or do you think we should be looking for a more physically robust centre forward?
I think we need something different up there because, as we kind of touched on last week, O and Kyogo are very similar in the way they want to attack the ball with a spearhead. So we do definitely need something different up front. Something like Edouard, who will drift out left. He's prepared to drop in, pick the ball up and run with it. Somebody who will sort of go at defenders with the ball at his feet. Hopefully. Difficult to say. I might want to go for somebody that's a bit more physical because somebody like Gigi was a physical presence because it's not kind of working out the way we were expecting it would be with all.
Seen a lot of talk around about the Twitter, the socials and stuff about a more physical midfielder. Is that something we should be looking at, Gav?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, when Willie gave his answer, I sort of agreed with him, but I'm not sure whether that kind of player is a higher priority than replacing the goalkeeper right now. Hart's probably got another decent season in. Is he Champions League quality? I mean, loads of our players aren't, probably. What was the question? I've totally forgotten the question.
A physical midfielder.
Oh, physical
we were linked-
midfielder. Yeah,
we
I
were-
mean, it wouldn't
we
be
were linked
bad
to
to have
the-
somebody who could, show a bit of muscle in there. Not that our players don't get involved, but yeah, I understand why the question's being asked for sure.
So we were linked with a player called Vinicius Souza last year, who's a Brazilian, big lad, central midfielder, could put himself about a bit. We missed out on him. I think he went to Espanyol in Spain instead of us, and who could blame him for that, really. We then went and signed Oliver Abelgard, who looked to be a similar type of player, but never really got a look in. So at least if, Ange sort of agrees that we do need a type of player like that, but it'll be interesting to see how that works out in the summer, whether we actually go back in for another physical player. Just bring up a comment there from Pete McGee. What's the story with Siegrist? I thought he looked excellent in the SPFL games I saw, so I was pleased when we signed him. And he hasn't really had a look in. Is there any chance that we can promote from within goalkeeper-wise and save ourselves, the £7 million for a new goalkeeper?
Yeah, possibly. That's my answer.
Yeah, I would have thought he's looked pretty impressive. And yeah, I guess it's that consequence of that approach that we have, isn't it? We don't rotate. And Hart's given no reason to give Siegrist a look in. But yeah, maybe that's the gutsy call that needs to be made in order to invest elsewhere.
Be interesting to see what Siegrist can do with the ball at his feet. I mean, he's a great shot stopper. We've seen it time and time again when we played Dundee United. But most of the time you see him when he gets the ball at his feet, he's just going to boot it up the park just to try and relieve the pressure that the Celtic are pushing teams like Dundee United under. So it'd be interesting to see if he can do it. But who's to say he can't?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule out giving Siegrist a game, one of the remaining 3 fixtures of the season, just to see, what he's got, if he's got a bit about him or not. And it'd be good if, it'd be good if we could find a young goalkeeper. I know the youth team goalkeeper saved a few penalties in the Glasgow Cup final against Rangers the other night there. So it'd be good if we had someone in the pipeline through the development system that could save us a right few quid. So yeah, that's it. That's the summer transfer window. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So we're on an agreement. We need a left back, a striker, little disagreement on a goalkeeper, and probably another midfielder anyway. So let's hope we can get that done over the close season. So we'll just move on to the last thing we want to talk about tonight, and that was the great Tommy Burns, who 15 years ago was taken from us at the age of 51. Which is far too young for anyone to be leaving us. Tommy described himself as a fan who was lucky enough to pull on the Hoops jersey and represent the club in the park. And throughout his career as a player and a manager, he truly reflected this. He was born a stone's throw from Celtic Park in the Carlton, and this was the story of a local boy who signed with the club he loved. Signed on with an S form with the club in 1970 and went on to make 467 appearances for the club, scoring 81 goals. Managed the club for a couple of seasons in the 90s during a really sort of poor period for the club. Even though he had a lot of good attacking players, managed to sign like Paulo Di Canio, Pierre Van Hooijdonk and George Cadet. His sort of inability to compete with a financially doped Rangers at the time sort of cut short his managerial career. With only really, I think, a Scottish Cup in 1995 to show for his trouble. So I'll go to you first, Willie. What's your memories of Tommy Burns and the sort of impact he's had on the club up to the present day?
Tommy Burns is one of these figures that's just going to go down in history as Celtic through and through, isn't he? He was a fan who got onto the pitch to play for us. He says it in some of the documentaries you see. He says, the way he celebrates goals against Rangers is you can just pick anyone out of the jungle, put them on the pitch, and they'll have the same celebration as me. Oh yeah, he was loved by all sides of the divide, even Rangers players and fans that had great respect for him. You saw it when he passed away. The tributes came out. There was Rangers fans standing next to Celtic fans outside Parkhead, laying down wreaths, strips, all the other sort of bits and pieces that they would do, scarves tied side by side. And as his coffin was carried out of the church, there was Ali McCoist and Walter Smith there as the pallbearers. So it just shows how greatly he was loved by the Scottish football in general. There was not one person would probably say a bad word about him. One of my happiest memories of him was that one of the first games I went to was in 2008 Champions League qualifier when we beat Spartak Moscow on penalties. And everyone did a big pile on top of Arthur Boric, and you could just see Tommy Burns, the fastest player in the pitch that night, running across the pitch and just like 6 feet in the air, jumping on top of them. Like, it was sheer delight in them. Just just all round great guy, and just sadly taken. And I actually think that the academy should be named after him for all the work that he's done to get it to the state it's in, produce players of the quality we can. Like the rest of the big teams in Europe are poaching them off us now.
Yeah, Dave, we don't often see sort of one club players these days who came from the local area and stayed at the same club and, you know, made themselves into legends. Now, that it's very rare that you see that these days. Tommy Burns was definitely one of those. And I know you maybe not offered the chance to see him play, but can you feel his effect on the club?
Yeah, definitely before my time, but it's what I love about this club and being a supporter of this club that I've mentioned on here before, but the respect and attention that we pay to players from the past, the fact that we're talking about Tommy Burns just now, and that even though I didn't grow up in Scotland and I didn't grow up at the time that he was playing, I do know who he is and what his legacy is. And yeah, I really like your point there, Willie, about, you know, whether he's a sort of possibly a unifying figure in, you know, what is clearly, but, you know, we have a lot of fun with it, but it's been a pretty damaging divide that exists between the clubs and between the different parts of Glasgow and what they represent. And, you know, just by being himself and being a great player, and as you point out, Stephen, a one club player who's, not quite one club, but who, you know, can embody a lot of the best things about Scottish football, even though we see the ugliness in that so often. I was in Scotland. I lived in Glasgow I was living in Glasgow when he passed away, and it was just before the final match of the year, Dundee United, and it was a real tussle that was on. You know, it was I think, from memory, we were even on points, and, you know, really going. So it was they had the funeral that week. I remember a lot of attention on it, and that's when I, you know, really started paying attention. But he was first team coach at that time, and really pointing out, you know, he was actually in the thick of it right until the very end, you know, and yeah, so an amazing story, and I'm pleased and proud to be on a forum like this and able to talk about people like him all these years later.
Yeah, I remember that game well. It was a tense game up at Tannadice. We had to win to clinch the league title, and we got the goal through Jan Vennegoor of Esselink, and he then pointed up to the sky as if he was, you know, dedicating it to Tommy. Very emotional night up there. Gav, do you think the club should be doing something more formal to recognise Tommy Burns? We have statues to a number of people, you know, Billy McNeil, Jimmy Johnson, Jock Stein, Brother Walford. But you think something more formal should be done for Tommy Burns along the lines of what Willie suggested, like maybe naming the academy after him?
Yeah, I imagine something like that will happen because he is a legendary figure at the club. But, you know, it usually takes a bit of time to pass before people are fully appreciated, you know. It's been 15 years, right, since he died.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, you know, that's quite a short time. But I think, in the fullness of time, I mean, he's already revered as a legend. So the more the years pass, the more that legend will demand something more permanent, as you mentioned. He died at 51 from skin cancer.
Yeah,
in his case, he had like a mole that he had since he was a kid. It's not a new thing that appeared, but it started to get bigger, and he didn't, do anything about it quickly enough, And as we all know with these things, you've got to act if you see anything changing like that on your body. So we should all be aware of our skin. Celtic Down Under, as the name suggests, is going to appeal to a lot of under-melanated people who live in sunny places. So, get yourself checked out. I go to see a doctor every 6 months to get my head examined. It'll come as no surprise to hear. But that's like because of my solar panel, I get scaliness and the danger of sunspots and actinic keratoses. So something I'm very conscious of, and you should probably get all your little blemishes looked at every now and then just to make sure there's nothing sinister.
Yeah, it would never happen in Australia. They don't take any prisoners here. As soon as anything appears, it gets gouged out with a big knife. So, so yeah, it's a terrible age to lose anyone at. I've got some great memories of Tommy Burns. I remember my first memory of watching Celtic on the TV was round about the 1977 Cup final, which I think was the first game televised, the first Cup final televised live, if I'm not mistaken. And Tommy Burns was on the bench for that game, and he was only either in his late teens or early 20s, and he had the fieriest mop of red hair that you could ever imagine. And he stood right out because they were wearing a really cool retro white tracksuit. And he really stood out, especially during the celebrations after the game, which we won 1-0. Some great performances in Europe down through the years. Scored a goal in a famous victory over Sporting Lisbon in the famous lime green away kit. Took part in the Love Street 1986 when we won the title against Hearts. And also the centenary year when I think he just reached the peak of his powers, and he was such a great player. Moved into management, it never went all in his own way as a manager. Wasn't able to win a league title, but never stopped representing the club in a dignified manner, in a terrible loss for us all. So it's only right that we raise a glass to Tommy on this day every year, and I hope that the club does do something more formal to recognise him in the years to come. So that's just about all we have time for tonight. I might just remind everyone to catch up on the Monday Weekend Review podcast, where they do more of a deep dive into the game on the weekend, if you can stomach that. And don't forget to tune in to the Wednesday Pot Noodle Show tomorrow, where for more picking over the bones of the defeat and looking ahead to next weekend. So I'll just go around and grab a final thought from you before we go. Dave, what's your final thoughts for us tonight?
I just wanted to show some appreciation to a great Australian footballer, Sam Kerr, and her leading Chelsea to the Cup victory on the weekend. No particular love or interest in Chelsea, but just to see the way that she, as an Australian, sort of leading this new generation of footballers, she is a genuine world leader and a world beater. And we're about to have a World Cup in Australia in the next few months. And I think if we didn't love her already, she's about to become an absolute superstar here. And as I'm not sure if the guys from Perth last night spoke about her. She's a great West Australian. As a West Coast Eagles supporter myself, a big West Coast Eagles supporter, her brother Daniel Kerr was an exceptional player for West Coast over many years, and I'm now well and truly well past the point of saying that Sam Kerr is Daniel Kerr's sister. It's well and truly the other way around. But there's an interview, so it's an interview that a number of interviews she did after game, but just the professionalism and the confidence and the desire that she has just really marks her out as a real winner. And I think in Australia, we should really get behind her.
Yeah, looking forward to the World Cup over here, and watching Sam Kerr and the Matildas. Hopefully they'll do really well in that tournament. Should also point out really that the Celtic FC women's team have got a really big game coming up this Sunday when the league title's gone to the last day of the season. Celtic and Rangers on the same points, and Glasgow City, I think, 2 points in front, with Glasgow City playing Rangers in the final fixture of the year and Celtic playing Hearts. So at this moment in time, any one of the three can win the league. And that would be a great achievement for the Celtic ladies team. So let's all get behind them. Gav, yeah, absolutely. So Gav, any final thoughts?
Okay, music again, because I want to pay homage to our commenters. Andrew Galea, during the last episode, last podcast, he suggested I revisit Skyhooks, an Aussie band that hit the heights in the 1970s. I'd never heard of them. So I looked them up on YouTube and thought I'd listen to a few of their songs. First one was Ego Is Not a Dirty Word. Okay, interesting enough. Second was Horror Movie. Again, something alluring about their funky 70s sound, but also a bit worried that I can't take too much of it. And then the third was Jukebox in Siberia. And I'm never listening to them ever again.
That was their comeback.
I know you're going to say that.
Yeah.
That was in
Not
1990. And I know I should have stuck to their earlier work, but it was like watching the Wiggles play Shakin' Stevens. Absolutely disgraceful. And for those reasons, Andrew Galea, I'm out.
All right, Willie, how can you top that, mate?
I can't top that at all. My final thought was good luck to the girls. I hope he's taking the title and have another one there in the bit of silverware at Paradise. That's all I look at, man.
Yeah, I'll second that. So my recommendation for the week is I've been listening to a podcast called Life with Brian, which is about Brian McClair, the former Celtic striker from the 80s, who does a podcast now. He's a really quite a sort of out there character now. He's got the long hair and the beard, and he talks a bit about politics, a bit about sport, and it's really a really good listen. I can thoroughly recommend it. The latest episode he's done is with Tony Curran, the actor, who's a big Celtic man from Glasgow, now living out in LA, and it's well worth a listen. So look it up on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Life with Brian, it's called. So yeah, that's been great fun. Thanks guys for joining me tonight, and thanks everyone who joined us in the comments. And all that's left for me is to say hail, hail, God bless Celtic, and God bless Tommy Burns.
Yeah.